17 years ago, a honeymoon in paradise turned into a mystery that froze the world in disbelief. On the 7th day of their honeymoon, Adrian Morales and Marissa Lane vanished, without a trace, leaving behind only questions and broken families. For nearly 2 decades, the world believed they were gone forever, until the day a barefoot woman stumbled out of the jungle. She said her name was Marissa, and the secret she carried would shake everyone to the core. Stay with us, because this is not just a mystery. It's a love story, a survival story, and a truth buried for 17 years. And before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Their honeymoon destination was the Kinabalu Highlands in Borneo, a place famous for its wild beauty. Dense rainforests stretched in every direction, the canopy so thick it swallowed the sun. Waterfalls poured through hidden valleys. The resort where they stayed was built as a secluded eco-retreat. No cell service, no distractions, just nature in its purest form. For Adrian and Marissa, it was meant to be paradise. That morning, their guide, Raphael, arrived at their cabin. He was scheduled to take them on a hike into the jungle. He waited, checked his watch, then knocked on the door. Silence. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. 30 minutes passed. Concerned, he alerted the staff, and together they used a spare key to unlock the door. The scene inside chilled them. The cabin was spotless, almost staged. Clothes were folded neatly inside their bags. Shoes were aligned by the door. The bed was perfectly made. Nothing was overturned, nothing broken, no note, no trace of struggle. Even the soil outside bore no footprints leading away. Adrian and Marissa had not packed for a journey, nor had they fled in panic. It was as though they had stepped out of existence. Panic spread through the resort. Within hours, a search was underway. Helicopters thundered above the canopy, scanning every ridge and riverbed. Teams of trackers with dogs pressed into the forest. Survival packages of food and water were dropped from planes, marked and monitored. Days later, not one had been touched. For weeks, the search stretched deeper and deeper. Every creek was followed. Every path was marked. But there was no evidence, no clothing, no campfire, not even a fragment of fabric caught on a branch. The rainforest had given nothing back. Eventually, hope collapsed. Headlines that once screamed of the honeymoon disappearance faded from newspapers. The case was closed, filed under unsolved tragedies. Officially, Adrian Morales and Marissa Lane were declared dead, but their families refused to let go. Evelyn, Marissa's mother, kept her daughter's piano exactly as she had left it. Sheet music still. Open, dusted every Sunday for 17 years, waiting for hands that would never return. Sophia, Adrian's sister, carried his pocket watch everywhere, winding it each night though its gears had long since frozen. To her, the ritual was a promise. One day, it will tick again. The world may have moved on, but for Evelyn and Sophia, time never healed. The mystery of Adrian and Marissa was not history. It was a wound that never closed. 17 years after Adrian Morales and Marissa Lane vanished, when the world had stopped asking questions, and their families had been forced to live with grief, something happened that no one could have predicted. At a jungle outpost clinic near the Malaysia-Indonesia border, a barefoot woman appeared from the trees. Her clothes were torn to rags, her hair tangled, her skin darkened by years beneath the sun. In her hands, she clutched a faded dust passport, as if it were her final lifeline. When she reached the desk, her voice was cracked but steady enough to whisper, "My name, Marissa Lane." The nurse froze in disbelief. That name belonged to a woman declared dead nearly 2 decades earlier. With shaking hands, the nurse checked the passport photo against the woman's face, then called for help. Officials rushed to verify the impossible, and when the fingerprint scan matched, the truth fell like a thunderclap. Marissa was alive. Doctors expected to find a broken, malnourished victim. Instead, their examinations revealed something different. Her body was lean and muscular, her heartbeat strong, her breathing controlled. She bore no signs of long captivity, no scars of abuse, no evidence of collapse. This was not a woman who had merely survived. This was a woman who had adapted. Yet her English faltered. She paused for long stretches, searching for words. At moments, she slipped into a language of tones and clicks that no one present could recognize. When asked where she had been all these years, Marissa lowered her eyes. Silence stretched until finally she whispered, "With them. Long time." Her words were broken, but her meaning was unmistakable. She had not been wandering alone. She had been living with others, deep in the rainforest. But one answer came without hesitation. When a doctor pressed gently, "Why come back now?" Marissa raised her head, and her voice gained sudden strength. "Adrian," she said, "he is alive, but sick, very sick. Try. Not enough. I need medicine." The room fell silent. For 17 years, the world had buried them together in memory. Yet here she was, declaring that Adrian still lived. Officials moved quickly. A rescue mission was formed almost immediately. Medical teams assembled antibiotics, fever reducers, and antiseptics. Security escorts prepared to cut through jungle terrain. Marissa sat quietly as the supplies were laid out, but when she saw the medical kit, her demeanor changed. She pointed firmly to specific items. This, for lungs. This, if wound breaks. This, to stop fever. She spoke not like a woman guessing, but like someone who had been treating him with her own hands. When a logistics officer unrolled a satellite map, Marissa studied the terrain with sharp focus. She did not point to the marked trails or tourist paths in red. Instead, she traced a line through the densest parts of the forest. "No road," she said softly. "But I know. I go many times." Her English was broken, but her conviction was unshakable. She was not offering them a chance. She was offering them a way home. At sunrise the next day, the team was ready. Packs were filled with medicine, food, and water. Machetes, ropes, and satellite phones were checked and rechecked. Each step had been planned, but everyone knew this was no ordinary expedition. They weren't heading into mapped trails or familiar ground. They were following Marissa into a world the outside had failed to reach 17 years ago. From the moment her feet touched the forest floor, something in her changed. She no longer moved like a patient under care. Her posture straightened, her stride grew purposeful. Her eyes scanned the canopy with practiced ease. She ducked beneath branches before others saw them, brushed away insects before they landed, and found vines heavy with rattan water to quench thirst without hesitation. The guards and medics exchanged quiet glances. Marissa wasn't struggling to survive out here. She belonged to this place. Hours passed as the group pressed deeper. The air grew thicker, the canopy darker. The forest hummed with unseen life, bird calls, the chatter of insects, the distant rustle of unseen animals. Marissa never faltered. She adjusted her pace with the rhythm of the terrain, guiding the team around hidden ridges and streams no map had marked. Every step carried the unspoken truth: they were not leading her. She was leading them. By nightfall, exhaustion pressed on the team. Tents were pitched near a ring of towering dipterocarp trees. The fire was lit, but even its glow felt fragile beneath the weight of the jungle. As they settled, a sound drifted through the night. At first it was faint, like distant thunder. Then it grew steady, a low, rhythmic pounding, drums echoing from somewhere deep within the rainforest. Voices followed, chanting in tones that seemed to weave with the pulse of the earth. The guards reached for their weapons instinctively, but Marissa lifted her head with recognition. Her eyes fixed on the darkness as if she could see what the others could not. "It's them," she said softly. Her voice held no fear. "They hear us now." The team froze, unsure of what that meant. The sound of chanting swelled and then ebbed, carried on the wind so that no one could tell where it began or ended. One of the officers whispered, "Are we safe?" Marissa turned toward him and nodded once. "If I walk first." "Yes." The fire crackled, the drums faded, and the forest fell quiet again. No one slept easily that night. They understood now that they were close. Closer than anyone had been in nearly 2 decades. Somewhere ahead waited the answers to a mystery that had haunted the world. Somewhere ahead waited Adrian Morales. At dawn, the rainforest shifted. The fire had burned to embers. The air hung heavy with mist, and every sound seemed sharper, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. Marissa moved first, stepping quietly between the towering trunks, and the team followed. They had traveled for hours when she suddenly raised her hand. The group froze behind her. Up ahead, the trees parted into a narrow clearing, and there they saw them. Dozens of figures emerged from the shadows, their bodies painted in earthen. Reds and greens, their eyes sharp, their hands gripping spears and bows. The silence was suffocating. For a moment no one moved. The rescue team gripped their weapons, but held their ground. This was the moment they had both feared and hoped for. The first contact. Marissa stepped forward. She did not speak. She did not raise her hands. She simply looked into the eyes of the elder, standing at the front of the group, a man, with skin weathered by decades of sun and eyes that carried the weight of generations. The elder studied her for a long, unbroken moment. Then, with deliberate care, he reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder. A ripple passed through the crowd, spears lowered, the painted faces softened. A woman carrying a child stepped forward and embraced Marissa with quiet tears. Another touched her wrist gently, as if to confirm she was truly there. The tribe had not just seen her before, they had known her, trusted her, and missed her. In that instant, the team understood. She wasn't a stranger returning after 17 years. She was family, and she had been all along. The tension melted into a solemn welcome. With a quiet nod from the elder, the villagers signaled for the team to follow. They were led through winding footpaths that twisted beneath the canopy until the forest opened again. Before them lay a hidden village. Huts thatched with palm leaves stood in circles. Small gardens grew. With yam and cassava, smoke rose from cooking fires, and children played barefoot in the dirt. It was a world untouched by modern noise, thriving in rhythm with the jungle. The officials stood in stunned silence, but Marissa's eyes searched only one place. Near the center of the village stood the largest hut, its doorway draped with woven mats. She hesitated, then stepped forward. Inside, the air was warm and heavy with the scent of herbs, and there, lying on a mat, was Adrian Morales. His body was thinner, his skin pale, his breath labored. Yet when his eyes opened and found hers, they lit with recognition. "Marissa?" he whispered. His voice was weak, but his smile trembled into life. She dropped to her knees beside him, taking his hand in both of hers. "I found help," she whispered, tears streaking her face. "I came back. I never stopped." The others stood silently outside, letting the moment pass without interruption. After 17 years, Adrian and Marissa were together again. With medical care on hand and the tribe's quiet support, Adrian slowly began to regain his strength. His breathing steadied, the fever broke, and color returned to his face. For days he spoke little, conserving his energy. But on the third evening, as firelight flickered across the village and the forest hummed with life, he and Marissa began to share the story no one had heard for 17 years. On the morning of their disappearance, they had left the resort before sunrise. A local had whispered to them about a hidden waterfall untouched by tourists, a secret gem known only to those who lived near the forest. Wanting to discover it together, they told no one. At first the path seemed clear, but soon the canopy thickened, the terrain twisted, and every direction looked the same. The forest was alive with echoes, bird calls bouncing strangely, footsteps swallowed by moss. By midday, they realized they were lost. For days, they tried to retrace their steps. Their food ran out quickly, and water grew scarce. On the third day, fatigue set in. By the fourth, their voices were gone, saved only for calling each other's names. On the fifth, too weak to go on, they collapsed beside a narrow stream. Adrian remembered little after that. Marissa said it was the moment the tribe appeared, silent figures who lifted their bodies and carried them through the undergrowth. At first, Adrian and Marissa believed they had been rescued only temporarily. But as days turned to weeks, the tribe continued to treat them. Their burns were healed with neem leaves, their hunger answered with sago starch, boiled into porridge, their thirst quenched by water filtered through bamboo. The villagers said little, but their actions spoke with clarity. They were not captors, they were caretakers. Trust grew slowly. The tribe began to teach them the rhythms of the forest, how to recognize safe plants, how to hear danger in the calls of birds, how to read the movement of ants for signs of coming rain. In return, Adrian and Marissa offered what little knowledge they carried, how to clean wounds to prevent infection, how to purify drinking water more quickly, how to treat fevers with methods the tribe had never seen. What began as survival became a partnership, and what began as fear became belonging. "We weren't trapped," Adrian said quietly to the medics who listened in silence. His voice was steady now, even as his body still trembled from weakness. "We weren't prisoners. We stayed because we found home." Marissa's eyes glistened as she nodded in agreement. "They gave us life," she said, "and in return, we gave ours." The officials exchanged uneasy glances. They had come expecting victims to rescue, yet what they heard was not a story of captivity. It was a story of choice. For nearly 17 years, Adrian and Marissa had lived with a tribe, not lost, not forgotten, but embraced as part of a world no one else had seen. For nearly 17 years, Adrian and Marissa lived as part of the tribe. They had stopped measuring time in years and instead in seasons, the blooming of orchids, the rising and falling of river levels, the great migrations of birds overhead. They were not outsiders anymore. They were family. But time has a way of catching up, even in the most hidden places. Adrian's illness began quietly, almost unnoticed. First came the cough, then fatigue. At first, the tribe treated him with steaming infusions made from herbs and roots. Marissa stayed at his side, preparing poultices and compresses, whispering that it was nothing more than a passing sickness. But the weeks turned into months, and Adrian grew weaker. There were days when he could no longer walk, nights when his breathing rattled so heavily that Marissa lay awake, pressing her hand against his chest, just to feel it rise and fall. She had spent years learning the tribe's remedies, but even she knew their limits. One evening, as Adrian lay staring at the flicker of firelight, he whispered, "Maybe this is it." His voice was calm, but his eyes carried the fear he rarely showed. Marissa shook her head. "No, not yet. Not like this." She pressed her forehead to his. 17 years we've survived everything this jungle gave us. I will not let this take you." But Adrian's reply was heavy. "You don't know if they'll believe you. To them, we died years ago." He coughed hard, his body shuddering. "If you leave, what if they don't let you return?" Marissa closed her eyes, her hands trembling as she held his. She knew he was right. To step outside the forest meant facing a world that had buried them long ago. But to stay meant watching him fade until there was nothing left. That night, after Adrian had fallen into restless sleep, Marissa made her decision. She gathered only what she needed, a small pouch of food, the carved amulet the tribe elder had given her as protection, and the single thing that could prove who she was, her faded passport, kept safe all those years. When dawn broke, the tribe gathered silently. No one spoke. No one tried to stop her. They knew what she was about to do. The elder placed his hand on her shoulder, just as he had when she returned with the rescue team. His eyes said everything words could not: trust, blessing, and hope. With a final embrace, she stepped into the trees, alone. For 3 days, she walked barefoot through the rainforest. The path was unforgiving. The ground tore at her feet, the sun beat down, and her strength waned with each passing hour. She drank from vines, chewed roots for energy, and pressed forward. At night, she slept beneath trees, listening to the forest drum with unseen life. By the 3rd day, she stumbled into the clearing of the jungle clinic, her body near collapse, but her purpose unbroken. And when she whispered her name, Marissa Lane, the world that had buried her in memory was forced to believe again. With modern medicine and careful treatment, Adrian's health improved. The fever broke, the cough eased, and within days he could sit upright, leaning gently against the woven mat inside the hut. The rescue team offered evacuation. They explained that a hospital in the city could give him the best chance at recovery. Better tools, more comfort, more certainty. For a long time, Adrian said nothing. He looked around at the village, at the children who carried water for him, at the women who checked his blankets, at the elder who visited each morning in silence. Then he turned to Marissa, and she already knew his answer. "We're staying," Adrian said softly, but firmly. "The world we left, it isn't ours anymore. This one is." Marissa nodded through tears. For her, the choice was not a sacrifice. It was the life they had built. To walk away now would be to abandon the very people who had carried them through the years the world believed lost. The rescue team respected their decision. Before they departed, they arranged one last connection, a video call. Evelyn sat trembling before the screen when her daughter's face appeared. 17 years of silence shattered in an instant. She pressed her hand to the image as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Marissa, my baby, is it really you?" Marissa's voice was soft but steady. "I'm alive, Mama. Adrian too. We're safe. We've been safe." Across another call, Sophia saw her brother's face and broke down, clutching the frozen pocket watch she had wound every night. Adrian smiled weakly. "You kept time for me," he whispered. She nodded through her sobs. For the families, it was not the reunion they had imagined, but it was closure. After years of not knowing, they finally had an answer. When the helicopters lifted away from the clearing, carrying the medics and officials back to the outside world, Adrian and Marissa stood side by side, watching the sky grow quiet again. For a moment, the jungle was still. Then the sounds returned, the hum of insects, the calls of birds, the laughter of children at play. Together, they turned back toward the village, toward the only home they wanted. Word of their survival spread across the world. Headlines declared the miracle of the honeymooners found alive after 17 years. But what shocked people most was not that they had endured, it was that they had chosen to stay. Adrian and Marissa had not just survived the rainforest, they had embraced it. In the place once feared as their grave, they found peace, family, and a life far richer than the one they had left behind. And though the world would forever remember them as the couple who vanished, those who knew their truth would carry a different story. They were the ones who returned, not to the lives they had lost, but to the life they had chosen. If you found peace in a forgotten corner of the world, where love endured, where community embraced you, and where silence held more meaning than noise, would you walk away? Or would you stay with the life that truly found you? Tell us in the comments what you would choose. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because the next story may change the way you see the world. Thank you for watching.